Hey everyone, this is Kevin from the chesswebsite.com, and today we're going to be looking at the Petrov Defense, which starts out with pawn e4, pawn e5, both sides trying to control the center. Knight developed to f3, central square. Black responding with knight f6, central square, both sides attacking and defending the center, and this is a mirror image from black, and this is done for a few reasons. A lot of GMs like this because it's a very drawish game, mirroring the other side at the beginning like this. A lot of other players do it to avoid the typical lines from the Ruy Lopez, the Italian game, the Gioco piano that you'll see come about after most black players play knight to c6. So a kind of a change in pace, and we're going to go over today the three common lines that you will see and how both sides should react when you do come across them. The first one that you will see more often than not of the three is knight to e5, captures on e5. And if you look at it right away, it looks very tempting for black to recapture on e4, trying to equalize the material right away. But this is going to be a huge mistake. If you play as black, you don't want to do this, and if you play as white, we're going to show you how to take advantage of this mistake. You can simply play queen to e2, attacking this knight. If the black then responds to f6, thinking that after he's equalized in material, he can just go back to his normal square of f6. Now white can bring his knight to c6 with a discovered attack on the king and winning this queen. Even if the queen moves to e7, defending the queen check, white can still capture with his knight. If he doesn't move his knight back to f6, white's still going to be up in material by at least a pawn. If black tries to move like d5, adding protection on his knight on e4, white can now come add more pressure with a move like d3. Then if black tries to push the game with a move like queen to e7, counterattacking our knight on e5, we can completely disregard this, take with our pawn, and after he takes our knight, we can capture on d5 safely, knowing that he can't take our pawn because our queen is eyeing down his king. He can exchange queens, or doesn't have to, but either way we're going to be up in material by at least a pawn, which is a very good game for white. So if you do in the beginning see white capture on e5, do not take right away. Instead, you want to play d6. And what this does is it forces white to move and then allows black to capture on e4 safely. So many times you'll see knight to f3, and then black can come to e4. And from here there's a few options that white has. One that you'll see a lot is pawn to d4, trying to solidify the center, and from here black's going to continue to push with pawn to d5, keeping white from pushing down any farther, and at the same time solidifying his knight on e4, making it very difficult for white to push it away right away. Sometimes though you may not see d4, you may see a move like knight to c3. And from here black has the option, if he wants to open up the game, remember this is a very drawish game, but if he wants to open up the game, a lot of players that, especially for white, they'll make this move because they want to instead make it drawish, make it very aggressive. And this comes about if knight captures on c3, white can recapture on c3 with his pawn. A lot of times you'll see it more often in the Ruy Lopez exchange variation, but if there's double pawns on the c2 and c3, or even on the black side of c7, c6, more than likely that side is planning to castle on the queen side. So if we assume that white's going to castle on the queen side, black castles on the king side, it's going to be in a very aggressive game. Anytime both sides castle on opposite sides, it's pretty much a race towards the other person's king. Both sides can pretty much kamikaze all their pawns and pieces on the side of the other king and not forfeit any of their defense they have for their own king. So again, for both sides, if you do want to open up the game and make it a little more aggressive, you can just go ahead and bring your your knight to c3, and then after the exchange, white can take on c3 and then castle queenside. So that's the first variation that you'll see, is if knight captures right away on e5. The next variation that we're going to take a look at is the most common, and that is d4, completely disregarding the first pawn. And from here, black has two options. He can take on d4 or he can take on e4. I personally recommend taking with our knight on e4. I think it's a great square for our knight, and I just don't like the complications that come about after taking with our pawn on d4. So from here, white can bring his bishop to d3. There's no reason right away. Keep in mind, in the Petrov defense, a lot of times the knights are being forced to move more than once at the beginning. So it's okay not to take this pawn right away. White's going to get that material back. From here, black has a few options. The most common option that you will see is pawn to d5, putting added pressure onto this knight here. From here, white can bring his knight to e5, and a lot of times here you'll see a continuous mirror image of bishop to d6. And as you can tell from this game, as it is a mirror image, this game is very drawish. So if you do like to play very drawish positions in the Petrov defense, you will also like this one as well. So those are the two most common that you'll see in the Petrov defense. Next, we're going to take a look at the third and last one that you will see. After e4, e5, f3, f6, the other variation that you will see is the 3 knights or the 4 knights attack, and that's just knight to c3. And from here, black has two options. He can have a game of the Petrov 3 knights attack, which is bishop to b4, attacking this knight, pinning it down once his white's pawn moves on the d file. Or he can go into the 4 knights game, which is knight to c6. So a lot of players will play this knowing that their opponent is going to get into the 4 knights game, where if they played the Roy Lopez and started out with their knights on f3 and c6, more than likely they know it would not get to the 4 knights game. But if a black player is very fond of the 4 knights game and wants to get there, more than likely he's going to try to get there using the Petrov defense. Instead of starting with knight c6, he's going to first start out with knight f6, and then after the knight to c3, he's then going to move his knight to c6. From here, white has a lot of different variations. You can study up on the 4 knights game. He can even go into the Halloween Gambit. But there are a lot of different variations in the 4 knights game that vary from any other game that you will see. So, hope you guys enjoyed the Petrov defense video. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you haven't checked out the website, www.thechesswebsite.com, make sure you check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next video.